What's up, guys? I'm back, and today I am back with none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Grant Cohn. How you doing today, Grant?
I'm batting 1,000. Amin, it's great to see you. It's been a long time. You looking good? How's life with you?
Life is good. I took 2 months off. In specific, I took 2 months off from streaming. Had school finals for 1 month, and then just was enjoying summer a little bit. But I'm back now. They're definitely gonna get more consistent uploads and more consistent live streams, hopefully. But I'm back and I'm glad to be on with you, Grant. It's been a while. Haven't called into the Cone phone for a while. So got to come back to
We
that
miss you
again.
out
But
there, man. You got to be back. You were the star of the Cone phone, man.
yeah, I still remember there was like a tweet. First time I called in the Cone phone, I remember that tweet. I saved that tweet a long time ago. The MVP of the Cone phone is currently this 13-year-old boy named Amin. I remember that tweet. I first saw that tweet, but I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to
I
be
mean,
back.
if this game was like the rap game, you would be like Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne was out here, platinum at like 15 years old. You were platinum at like 13. I'm just saying.
You're too kind, man. You're too kind.
Thanks.
But let's jump right into it. Starting off with Julian Edelman went on the I Am Athlete podcast with what's the name? I can't remember. Brandon Marshall, wide receiver for the Jets and Broncos, and he was on that podcast. And Brandon Marshall handed Julian Edelman this card where it had Martellus Bennett's tweet. Martellus Bennett's quote about him talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and his injury. And I remember I did a show with you about when Martellus Bennett had his podcast and he starts bashing Jimmy and saying, Jimmy's this and Jimmy's that. And I was on your show.
Yeah.
And then Julian Edelman basically said, he said the story. He said same thing that kind of, Martellus Bennett said, but kind of in a more polite way. But he basically said, Jacoby Brissett hurt his thumb. He had no ligaments in his thumb, and it's hard to grip the ball as a quarterback. And Jimmy Garoppolo was practicing, and then he didn't decide to play. And then Julian Edelman right at the end said, I was kind of upset as a competitor because I put my body on the line every single week, going and game in and game out. Yeah. So for our quarterback kind of not to do that, I get it, for his agent said not to, but Julian Edelman didn't seem too happy about it. He was definitely more polite than Martellus Bennett, but he didn't seem too happy about it. So now I ask you this question. Is Julian Edelman right about Jimmy Garoppolo?
That's a tough question. That's a loaded question. Let me dance around it for a minute. Who might have disagreed with Julian Edelman? Julian Edelman played with him. Julian Edelman's my age. He's a very smart guy, Jewish, from the Bay Area. Who might have disagreed with him? What's so amazing about this whole thing is that this was 6 years ago. Julian Edelman and Martellus Bennett are still livid to the point where Julian is coming out right before Jimmy Garoppolo is about to get traded. And it seems like he's trying to sabotage whatever market there is for Jimmy Garoppolo. Like any team Cleveland. People are talking about Cleveland traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. They have Jacoby Brissett, right? So they have Deshaun Watson. He could get suspended for the year. Baker Mayfield wants out. That would leave them with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback. Well, what did Julian Edelman say this week? He's saying, I like Jacoby. The entire locker room in New England, and that's a championship locker room, right? Like they're like the Warriors. We like Jacoby. We don't respect Jimmy Garoppolo. And we don't respect him so much that 5 years later, when he thought this was in his rearview mirror and he thought he was going to get his next payday, we're popping back up and saying, you know what? This guy is unacceptable as a leader of a franchise. The Niners might like him, but we think he's unacceptable, and we're going to try to affect his bottom line, his money. Really, what Julian Edelman's doing right now is aggressive, right? It's kind of outrageous. It's going to affect Jimmy. He's basically saying, hey, Cleveland, hey, any team thinking about investing in Jimmy, don't do it. I highly recommend you don't do it. That's amazing to me. So, I still haven't answered your question. Is Julian Edelman right about Jimmy G? Let's be fair to Jimmy, right? Like, he played through the thumb injury this year, right? He played through the shoulder. He did it. So, I don't know if he did it in the past. I don't know if he'd do it in the future, but he did it this year, and I have no axe to grind against Jimmy, so Julian does. Julian does. I don't. So I'd have to give Jimmy some credit here. Like, hey, he kind of did what you said he wouldn't do. I don't know if he'll do
Yeah.
it again, but he did it once.
I mean, can you blame Julian Edelman though? Because I mean, like Jimmy did play, with that thumb injury through the NFC Championship and throughout the playoffs. But I mean, what Julian Edelman is saying is kind of true, and I said it when I was on your show, was that we get mad at Jimmy for the same exact reason, as Martellus Bennett was upset with Jimmy, and as Julian Edelman was upset with Jimmy, because Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot of injuries, right? And he gets hurt a lot, and then Niners fans are like, oh, damn it, another year Jimmy Garoppolo's hurt. Great, our season's pretty much over before we had Trey Lance. So, I mean, Niners fans get upset with Jimmy Garoppolo about the same exact thing. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like, can you blame Julian Edelman? But I got to give props for Jimmy because he did play through the playoffs. He made it. He helped us get to the NFC Championship game, or he was the quarterback for the NFC Championship game. So I mean, he did kind of prove some of
Hold
the
on.
doubters wrong.
Let's try to be fair to Jimmy because I've been very hard on Jimmy for a very long time, and like pretty much everyone agrees with me now, and he's taken a lot of flack, and I feel like it's too much. Like, man, Julian and Martellus filleting him about stuff that happened 6 years ago. Like, let it go. And I understand from their perspective, like that was a bunch of 30-year-olds on a team trying to win a championship. And they did win it. They beat the Falcons that year in the Super Bowl. That was a championship team. And from their perspective, like Jimmy was a kid and he was thinking about himself and his future when Jacoby was selling out and Brady was selling out and Julian was selling out because that's the culture. But it's like, okay, I mean, fine, like let it go. Let it go.
Yeah,
That was a long time ago, and Jimmy was a kid, and now he's different, and he's kind of answered those questions. And I mean, I don't like the fact that he can't throw down the field, and I don't like the fact that he can't move or really read defenses. But this just feels like a cheap shot that I wouldn't take on the guy. Because frankly, say what you want about him, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. He's above this stuff. He's not gonna like clap back, right? He's not gonna be
yeah,
like, oh, what did Julian say? Like, he's basically a pretty I don't know what you want to say. Professional isn't the right word, but he's a good guy. He's a good dude. And I feel like Julian, like, stop. It's a bad look at this point. It was 6 years ago. Let it
yeah.
go. But hold
I mean,
on. If the
he did
Niners
kind
cut
of.
Jimmy, don't you get a feeling that Julian Edelman might even like tweet something like haha? Like there are some people that I think we're underestimating just how upset these people are.
I don't know if Julian Edelman would do that, man, because we don't want to spark some controversy with Julian Edelman. I don't know if Julian Edelman might do that, because at the end of the day, Jimmy's still his teammate or was his teammate. But I don't know if
Yeah.
you do that to a former teammate. And Julian Edelman doesn't seem the type of person to do that. But I mean, Jimmy did play in the NFC Championship. He played
I
throughout the
mean,
playoffs, but
to me, doesn't this feel like a hostile? Dude, what Julian and Martellus said feel like hostile acts from former teammates. And I know, like in San Francisco, everyone loves Jimmy in the locker room, but apparently not New
yeah,
England.
not New
Not
England.
New England. It's hostile, and it's like it's not just they came out and were emotional about it. 6 years later, that's wild and cold.
Yeah.
Right before he's about to be on the market, that's extra cold. I mean, wow. It's petty.
Yep,
Yeah,
it sure is. I
it's
mean,
quite
Niners. You said it also. I mean, the Niners. Niners players don't really have any issues with Jimmy. All of them are like, Jimmy's a great leader. Jimmy's that. Jimmy's a great quarterback. And you never hear any. I haven't heard any Niners players so far talk and say anything bad about Jimmy Garoppolo. At least from my mouth, I
no.
haven't heard anybody say something bad
But
about
let's
Jimmy
wait a
Garoppolo. At
couple
least a
years. Let's
player.
see what happens when he's off the team. Maybe
Could
there'll
be the
be
same
maybe there'll
situation.
be people
Who knows?
holding grudges 6 years down the line. I kind of feel bad for Jimmy. He takes a lot of flack. He does take a lot of flack.
He
And what is
does.
his biggest flaw? Being mediocre, pretty much. He's
Kind
just
of.
kind of mediocre. Sorry. Oh well. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right, David. He's worse than mediocre in the playoffs. That's the truth.
He's not going to be able to win the big game, and I don't want to go into further topics because I'm going to say I'm going to spew my other things for the other topics, but I mean he can't win the big game. He just can't,
I
right?
mean,
And I mean even in that Super Bowl, he just can't.
no.
He just
But
can't.
here's the way I look at it. I mean, the way I look at it is like a lot of times in a lot of sports, baseball, football, people can come on the scene with limited skill sets who aren't necessarily superstars but have early success. because they do certain things well, and the rest of the league hasn't figured you out yet. They just aren't. They don't really know what you do. The book isn't out on you. But as you play
Yep.
more, I mean, Jimmy was this phenomenon where he's like 28, 29, and he's like a rookie. No one knew his game, but as he played more, it was like, okay, you don't throw deep. You don't throw outside the numbers. You don't move. You pretty much lock onto your first target and just fling it just to get the ball out of your hands in 2.5 seconds. He's a once the book was out on Jimmy, it was clear he was a liability. He is an interception waiting to happen. And the way that Kyle worked around it was, let's run the ball as much as possible. Let's have as many like safe throws, like screens and this and things. But I mean, at a certain point, 3rd and 7, you can't avoid it, right? And that's who Jimmy is. The book's out. No one. That's why they can't trade him at this point.
I mean, I think part of Jimmy, obviously we saw him in 2017, right? I think Jimmy was 2017. I was a huge Jimmy fan, right? Because you saw Jimmy do things in 2017 that you just didn't see him do the last couple of years, right? Jimmy in 2017, there was one specific throw I remember to Trent Taylor where he's rolling to his left and he sidearms it to Trent Taylor in the end zone, right? Those are things that Jimmy used to do, and even in 2018, Jimmy would sometimes scramble, not often, but Jimmy would scramble sometimes for the first down. But then I feel like after he got injured, Jimmy just was never the same again. Where Jimmy on that play where he got hurt against the Chiefs and he started running and he got hurt, then what happens in 20 when he comes back off of injury, Jimmy wasn't the same. Jimmy wouldn't run. Jimmy would hold the ball. Jimmy would kind of freeze in the pocket and take sacks. So I feel like Jimmy after the injury wasn't the Jimmy that the Niners expected when they gave him the $100 million contract. Wasn't the Jimmy that we saw in 2017. It was a complete opposite.
I agree, but like even before he tore his ACL, he had this crazy winning streak, and it felt like, I don't know, it felt like it's probably before your time, but Linsanity, Jeremy Lin, he was like the superstar for a couple of months.
3 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks, right? 3 weeks.
Yeah, and it was like, you're not this. How are you doing this? And there's been these moments in sports where players can sort of perform above their skill level for a month or two, or a couple of years. And Jimmy did that for a while. Like you could watch him, and it's like, man, he doesn't throw that hard. He doesn't move that well. Like there's nothing he does exceptionally, but he's 16-2. How?
Yeah.
And like
I think that's because of the situation that he's in. Because he's with Kyle, who game plans around his strengths, runs the ball a lot, doesn't make Jimmy throw the ball, deep down the field, right? So I think a lot of that credit goes to Kyle Shanahan for scheming up a game plan where you can win with Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's true, but it's also just defensive coordinators not being exposed to him. Like once there's data, they'll figure you out. And when I was talking to coaches about it back 2017, they would point to like different sports, especially baseball is a big one because as a hitter, you have the advantage until pitchers have data on you, until they know what you can and can't. Well, that's the way I look at it. And what they would say is like, look at Willie McCovey back in the 60s. His rookie year, he hit 354, Hall of Famer. Never hit that ever again. That was the best year he ever had, his rookie year, because you have a great year. You put the league on notice. They see what you do. They see what you struggle at. They try to work on what you struggle at. And it's like a constant battle of, I've established a weakness. They attack it. Now I've improved on it. Now there's a new weakness. And that's, if you can do that, you'll end up being a Hall of Fame player. Jimmy couldn't. Once there was some data on Jimmy and there was some defined weaknesses and people could attack those, it was over. It was over. And that's why another guy crowning him early on. It's like, man, this dude has played like a season and a half. Look at someone like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr. Those guys have played a lot of games and people have kind of written them off, but they've come back. Like, let's see Jimmy do something like that,
Mm-hmm. Speaking of another guy like Linsanity, I don't know if you know who Doug Flutie is.
Yep.
Yeah, Doug Flutie had that stint with the Bills right before he was about to retire, and Doug Flutie made that team a playoff team. They beat the undefeated Jaguars at the time. I mean, Doug Flutie kind of turned around that team. Sad what happened to the Bills, because I mean, I don't want to go into details, but man, they benched Doug Flutie against the Titans in the AFC wildcard game, but I think it was Rob Johnson who they were giving a bunch of money to. And they don't play Doug Flutie, and it was like, what? And then now when I first heard that, I'm like, dude, what was going on in the Bills' mind. Like, who, like, imagine someone doing that now. Like, let's say a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or someone like that, and then you bench them for the backup, like Nathan Peterman, and you're like, what? Like, it doesn't make any
Right.
sense. But
Yeah. I remember
yep,
that. That was a long time ago.
yep.
That was
Well,
before you were born.
yep. That was 1990 something. Yep.
That
That
was
was
like 99, 2000, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. God,
Next topic.
so bad. I mean, anyway,
Next topic. Was it smart or was it dumb to let Jaskowski Tart walk?
no problem with letting Jaquaski Tart walk. He's 30. He's a DB. He's not injury prone, but he's not particularly durable. He's not a playmaker. I think he's totally replaceable. My issue was the Niners didn't replace him.
Yep.
They didn't draft a safety. I mean, they signed a dude who's like an all-pro special teamer, not a safety, and they basically said Talanoa is our guy. But this is the same team that a few years ago said Adrian Colbert's our guy. I wish they would have hedged their bets and just drafted a safety. They didn't even have to do it in round 2, but they didn't draft one at all. They signed Leon O'Neal Jr. Leon O'Neal Jr., who's on Twitter saying he's going to make the team. I'd like to see him like do something first, but yeah.
How has he been? I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Leon O'Neal Jr.
I mean,
How's he been?
I've seen like 4 or 5 practices. I haven't seen him do anything yet. So hold on. But it's like in OTAs and minicamp, they don't do one-on-ones. One-on-ones are it's like a moment of truth. And if DBs can't hold up, doesn't mean that they're not good. But if he can like win one-on-one in those drills, I'm watching. I'm noticing. That's why I always liked Dwelly, because that was his drill. I mean, he would win. Also, use check. You cannot stop use check in the one-on-ones. Kittle's also excellent in those. So we shall see how he does. But like I watched Talanoa last year in those one-on-ones. Not good. Not good. But the Niners are all about not putting him in man-to-man cover situations, putting Ward in those situations, and just having Hufanga play like single high, basically zone stuff. Well, what if Ward gets hurt? Ward's 30, 31. I mean, the safety position is thin, big time thin. And so, like, again, I don't have a problem letting Tart go, but where was the draft pick? I'm sorry. Where was the draft pick?
Where was the draft pick? Or even Baymax says it, right?
Tart was drafted a running back in round 3.
What? I still I mean, I've heard some good things about Ty Davis Price, but I was about to go eat dinner and I Niners were picking, and then I saw a running back and I'm like, dude, what are we doing, right? Because the Niners have a bunch of deaths at running back.
Yeah.
Right, Hasty, Wilson, Mitchell,
and running backs Sherman. It doesn't, right? Like Elijah Mitchell was a 6th-round pick last year. You don't have to do it. And every time the Niners make this big swing and a big investment in a running back, it never pays off. Jerick McKinnon, Joe Williams. It's like, why? The safety is like a very important position. The safety is a player who plays 100% of your snaps, not a running back. You know what I mean? That's one way to look at it. Your starting strong safety plays 100% of the snaps. He better be good. It's a passing league. You got the Cardinals in your division playing 3-4 receivers every snap. Every snap. I don't know, man. I don't get it. But we shall see.
I mean, Baymax says Tar was boring. Wish you got the Honey Badger to make this team historic. But oh well, man, I would love to see Honey Badger on this team, right? But obviously the Niners didn't do that. I know, but I mean, even the price, right? Like, I thought he was going to get, 50 mil, 60 mil. He only got, 30 million, 37 million.
He would have been an excellent addition to Amin, but no. Yeah, the Niners are still trying to get a 7th-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. If the Niners cutter did whatever with Jimmy released him, you could have signed Badger, and then imagine Honey Badger and Jimmy Ward side by side. Like, I mean, that solves your problems right there. And he didn't get, and he got an affordable contract.
It seems like the teams that really are trying to win a Super Bowl made all-in moves. Like, the Saints got they got Honey Badger and Jarvis Landry, right?
Yeah,
not messing around. Like the
Chargers.
But look, the Raiders were 10-7 last year. They went and got Devontae Adams. Okay, and Chandler. They got Chandler Jones too.
Chandler Jones next to Max.
Okay, so those are like, hey, we're on the cusp. We're not messing around. The Niners were like, we're on the cusp, and we're messing around. we're still trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and like we're just gonna get Travarius Ward and Sand Pat. Like what? I'm sorry. A lot of other teams that went 10-7 or slightly worse or slightly better, much more aggressive this year. And the last two Super Bowl winners were extremely aggressive that offseason. Were rewarded for it. I don't understand why the Niners. Well, I do understand. They're being freaking overly cautious, bordering on cowardly because Trey is their new
Yeah,
QB.
I think same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're just a little bit worried because they don't know how Trey will be, and obviously they're a little bit worried. So I mean, if Trey balls out this year, and obviously a lot of Niners fans expect us to make the playoffs if we don't get injured. I mean, but I think the Niners, if Trey Lance balls out and we expect Trey Lance to, Trey Lance will have his downs. He obviously has ups and he'll have his downs. He'll make his mistakes, but at the same time, if Trey Lance is what we all expect Trey Lance to be, I think the Niners, if they didn't go in this offseason, I think if Jimmy's gone next year, I think they're probably going to go all in next season.
That's I agree, but I feel like what the Niners are saying is like they're using the wrong part of their brain. I mean, what they're saying is like, look, he didn't play last year. He didn't play the year before that. He went to Division II school. Like he's a first-year starter. He's 22. Look at historic precedent. It's unrealistic to expect him to take us to a Super Bowl victory, given all that. But what I would say is, you really think he's worse than Jimmy? There's no way he's a downgrade from what you had last year. And if you could go that far twice with that, mediocrity is a generous thing to say about that guy. You can do better with 22-year-old inexperienced Trey Lance. Come on, have some guts and go all in. Help him out. Don't have the money that you should be investing in your team sitting as the backup quarterback. I was interviewing a guy, like I write for Fan Nation, part of on Sports Illustrated. I do the Niners site. I interviewed the Browns guy today. And I was like, so a lot of people speculating in the debate that the Niners are going to trade Jimmy to Cleveland. What do you think of that? He's like, yeah, I think that could definitely happen. If the Niners take Baker Mayfield back, I'd rather just cut Jimmy. Like, what do you need Baker for? What?
I don't want Baker Mayfield.
No, what are you doing? You should not be spending that money on Trey's backup because what that says is you don't believe in Trey. What you need to do is spend the money on the offensive line. Spend it on the freaking, show not just Trey, the team and the world that you believe in them. Because you really haven't done it yet. You really haven't.
I mean, the Niners are just being precautious, but I mean, I agree with you in that aspect of, you know what, like, you made it that far with Jimmy G. You did, right? You made it to the NFC Championship game. Last year with Jimmy G with an injured thumb, not 100% healthy, you made it to the NFC Championship
game. In spite
game,
of him.
And then you made it with the Super Bowl. And you made it to the Super Bowl in 2019.
In spite of him.
Yeah. So unless, like, I mean, unless we're not knowing
in the
anything.
NFC Championship game and won. 8. I mean.
Yep. So smarter done to let Tart walk. I mean, that's a tough one, right? Because from what I've seen from Talanoa Hufanga last year, it was rough. It was rough, especially in coverage. It was not pretty. It was rough.
Smart to let him walk, dumb not to replace him.
Burned.
George Odom is not a replacement.
I don't think he's a replacement.
That's a special teams addition.
Yep. Hopefully Talanoa Hufanga pans out. But like I agree with Baymack. I would have probably gone for Tyrann Mathieu, but obviously the Niners aren't big spenders. They don't go out and get those superstar players. So really, I didn't expect that from the Niners. Obviously, I wish the Niners did that, but I don't expect that from the Niners. But I mean, that safety position is a liability because if Talanoa Hufanga doesn't pan out and he's not what the Niners expect him to be, then you're kind of screwed at the safety position, right? Except for Jimmy Ward, right? So like, I mean, it's a smart move. I would say it's a smart move. If Talanoa Hufanga, is what the Niners expect him to be, but it's probably a dumb move if Talanoa Hufanga isn't great. And especially because if you didn't draft a safety, and George Odom, I really don't think he's the answer. Like you said, I think he's a special teams guy. I don't think he's the answer at safety. Even in Indianapolis, he wasn't the starting safety. He just wasn't.
But again, the Niners could have signed Tart as depth. Like the Niners are one injury away to Jimmy Ward to having George Odom out there or Travarius Ward. So yeah, I mean they're gonna regret letting Tart walk because they didn't replace him. I don't think Odom qualifies. I could be totally wrong. I just don't think he does.
Me neither. Well, moving on to the next topic. We talked about the safeties as a liability, but the position group, or what position group will determine the 49ers success in 2022?
Man. To me, like I'm not overly concerned about any position group on defense, even though I've just complained a lot about safety. To me, like the Niners have proven the last 3-4 years that they can put together a top 5 defense, regardless of coordinator,
Yep.
regardless of their edge rushers. I mean, they always seem to figure it out. Offense is the adventure on this team. And I know everyone's looking at the quarterback spot, of course. Obviously, if Trey Lance is a bust, then they're screwed. But also with the offensive line, like what if Trey Lance is really good and they can't protect him and he, breaks his thumb or gets his knee caved in like Joe Burrow, right? I mean, it's happened.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
those are the questions I have. I don't question their running backs, their tight ends, their wide receivers.
Mhm.
Like they're good. Their defense is top notch. What about the quarterback and the ability to protect the quarterback? Though that's what it's all about to me this whole season. And I mean, you could say that 2020 was like that, right? 2020 they lost Bosa, still at a top 5 defense. But the season fell apart because they could not protect their quarterback at
Yep.
all. They went through
Mhm.
all 3. They led the league in quarterback hits allowed, and they stunk. So I don't know.
I mean, obviously, the obvious answer would be, the quarterback in Trey Lance. If he pans out, great. And if we expect him, if he does, ball out, and he is what the Niners fans expect him to be, that's great. But I mean, you said it. There's two things that I look at. Obviously, the main position group I would say is the offensive line. Now, coming into last year, I would say it's the cornerback position, right? But then you addressed it by getting in a guy like Travarius Ward, Jason Verrett back. Hopefully, we don't have any injuries there. But the biggest question mark outside of maybe the quarterback, which I'm confident in, is the offensive line. Because
Yeah.
obviously you have Trent Williams on that left tackle who solidified. He's great, probably one of the best offensive linemen, if not the best offensive lineman in football. But you look at the left guard position, right? You lost Laken Tomlinson. Now, as much as Laken Tomlinson isn't this phenomenal top 5 offensive lineman, but one thing that Laken Tomlinson brought to the 49ers is that he was available. He was available every week,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, did he have his penalties occasionally? Yes. There were some times throughout the season where on third down situations, something like that, Lakin would get called for holding, or Lakin would get called for a face mask. But Lakin Tomlinson could go in and week out without getting hurt. And that's something that's rare for the 49ers. So as much as other teams might not value that as much, but as a Niners fan, right, I value when someone can go in and week out and be healthy and not get injured. Because as a Niners, especially in the last couple of years, the Niners have had a lot of injuries, especially in 2020. We had like almost 20 of our starters on injury, like 20 players of ours that were injured and that were on IR. So obviously, as Niners fans, we value that what Laken Tomlinson brought. But now he's gone. He went to the Jets. He got like $40 million, and I mean, if the Niners could afford him, I think they would probably brought him back. But they just couldn't, right? So that's obviously a question mark. Left guard, Aaron Banks. Will he pan out, or will he be, or will he be a bust? Will he not succeed? Will he allow a lot of sacks?
Also, real quick, I feel like left guard, it's a question mark, but like it's Banks, it's McKivitz, it's more like there's options.
There
Center?
is options.
Center? What are the
Center.
options? You
Mm-hmm.
got Jake Brendel, and if that doesn't work out, like all of a sudden, they're either gonna move Brunskill over and just shift everything around, or bring up Donovan West, who is an undrafted free agent rookie. To me, the center, they got like a hope and a
Mm-hmm.
prayer at that position, man. They don't have many
Yep.
options.
Yep. Center, obviously, you mentioned it, right? Alex Mack retired. Who do you have? You have Jake Brendel, who I've heard a lot of good things about, but I haven't seen nothing from Jake Brendel, right? I haven't seen him, in the last
Yeah,
couple of years,
man.
and I know he got hurt
They
last
say
year.
good things about Brendel based
Yep.
on practice. Like that's a tough way to judge
Yep. Yep.
Linemen
It definitely is. It
practice.
definitely is. So
Yeah,
center, and then you have Donovan West. I mean, you have him, but the center position is definitely a huge question mark, right? And I mean, Jesse from Last Second Sports, shout out to him. He was in the chat, but he
who?
suggested the Niners should sign Jesse from Last Second Sports.
Oh, for
But I mean,
sure.
yeah.
Jesse
I mean, but
Naylor.
Jesse, yep. But I mean, the center
Shout out
position,
Jesse. He's a
right?
baller.
Like, yeah, Jesse's a man. But I mean, the center position, You lost Alex Mack, but if Jake Brendel doesn't pan out, you're kind of screwed because then you're gonna have to shift everything around. Brunskill may be at center, so you're kind of screwed if Brendel doesn't pan
Right.
out. And I mean, the
Yeah.
Niners say a lot of good things about all their players, right? I mean, you don't really hear the Niners saying, "Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo sucks," or "Ayuk sucks," or "Debo sucks," right? You don't hear. Obviously, a coach isn't going to do that to their own player, so obviously saying positive things in practice. But Jake Brendel, that's a huge question mark. Even Brunskill, I mean, we know what Brunskill can do. My biggest, also another concern is that right tackle spot, McGlinchey. Now, McGlinchey, we all know it. He's a good run blocker. But in pass blocking, he straight up sucks. Okay, I'm going to be honest. He's not good at pass blocking. And now he's injured last year. He got injured last year. So what happens coming off of injury? What's going to happen? Like, please, I'm genuinely curious what's going to happen after he comes back from injury. Because
Right. Because
last year he was healthy.
the
What were you
logic
going to
is
say?
like he wasn't even that great before he got hurt, right? This
Yeah,
is a really
Logic, he
serious
wasn't that
injury.
great before he got hurt. I mean, and last year, right, he was healthy going up against a J.J. Watt or someone like, or a Chandler Jones. This year, he's not healthy. So if he has to go up against a J.J. Watt or, someone like that, he's going to get killed.
Look, there's a large segment of 49ers Twitter that feels that Mike McGlinchey is unfairly criticized. I'm not part of that segment. I feel like he's not criticized enough. And I don't think it was a coincidence that the Niners were like 3-5 with him in the starting lineup last year. And when he went down and Tom Compton came in, they won on that run. Tom Compton is not a good offensive lineman, but he's better than Mike McGlinchey. And I think it was I mean, Tom Compton gave up like 11 sacks in like 11 games last year. It was not good, but he was better than McGlinchey. He's a better run blocker than McGlinchey. And a big reason the Niners were able to go on that run is they had someone who could back up McGlinchey and do better. So do they have that this year? I don't know. It
Yeah.
seemed like Jalen Moore showed flashes last year. So maybe him in his second year after, being in the weight training program for
I
years,
like
maybe
Jalen Moore.
Jalen Moore.
I like Jalen
So
Moore.
if he can
Yep.
step up and do what Tom Compton did or better last year, Niners are in business.
Yep.
Because I'm highly skeptical that McGlinchey is going to have a positive impact on a football team in 2022. I could be wrong.
Yep. And I mean, we saw last year in the Super Bowl, right? The Bengals were really good, right? The Bengals, nobody expected the Bengals to win the division, but what kind of lost them the Super Bowl
The
is that their
offensive
offensive
line,
line sucked. The
7
offensive
sacks.
line sucked, right?
Yeah,
And even going
7
back to
sacks.
forget about Trey Lance, right? For a second, majority of us agree who's the best quarterback in the NFL. They'll say Patrick Mahomes right now. Who's the best quarterback in the NFL?
Right.
What happened when Mahomes went up against Brady in the Tampa defense?
And he had an offensive line. He
Yeah,
lost.
he had no offensive line. And this man's
Lost.
running for his life, and he's Patrick freaking Mahomes.
There's only so
right?
much you can do, right?
Yeah, so Patrick Mahomes can't win with a bad offensive line or offensive
Reggie
line. that's
McKenzie
questionable.
once told my dad. Reggie McKenzie played in the league and was the Raiders GM. His phrase was, "The big people let the little people play football." It's true. It's
Yep.
true. And to
Yep.
me, like, hold on real quick. The Niners are all about drafting and investing in defensive line. I get it, but defensive linemen those are positions you can platoon. You can have your run defenders, you can have your pass rushers, and you can have guys playing 50% of the snaps. Offensive linemen, those guys play 100% of the snaps.
Yep.
And if he's weak in run blocking, pass protecting, that's going to get exposed at a certain point. He better be really, really, really good. So to me, I'd be more invested in the offensive line than the defensive line. But that's not how the Niners do their thing, and they're very successful. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, offensive line's probably the biggest question mark, and if that will determine their success. And I mean, like I said, Super Bowl last year, Bengals didn't have the good offensive line. Joe Burrow couldn't do nothing, especially on that. He got pressured, had to get rid of the ball, game over, right? So you need a good offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, you can manufacture pass rush, right? Blitzes, stunts. There are things you can do. You can't really manufacture pass protection. You either got guys who can block or you don't. So,
Yep.
Well,
I was watching ESPN yesterday, and Schefter was talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. And Schefter basically said there are a few teams that are interested in Jimmy Garoppolo, mainly Cleveland, Carolina, and Houston possibly could be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. So do you actually think these three teams have a legitimate shot or will actually go and make an attempt for Jimmy Garoppolo? Or do you think this is just not true? Schefter's just saying things to say things.
Let's go through it. He said it like those are three teams that need quarterbacks, not that they necessarily need Jimmy or want Jimmy. Let's go through it. Houston, I mean, they're not going anywhere with Jimmy or without Jimmy. So
Yep.
why trade for 1 year Jimmy? What are you
Yep.
doing?
And yep,
Frankly, Davis Mills looked good last year. I don't think there's anything that
he
Jimmy does
did.
better than Davis. He's younger, he's cheaper, his skill set's cool, he played well. How what I'm trying to hold on. How would why I'm trying to look for the words. You give Davis Mills the first year starting. He plays well. You put him on the bench. How is that developing a quarterback? You know what I mean? Like you either sit him for a couple of years and then play him, but you don't play him and then sit him. You don't do that, especially if
Yep.
he played well on a bad team. So I don't see Houston making sense. Carolina, I mean, they have Sam Darnold. They drafted Matt Corral. I'll just go with Matt Corral. You're bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo. What you're going to do is you're just bringing in the next Sam Darnold. You're just going to be disappointed the way you were with Darnold because they're the same guy, except Darnold can move a little bit. Neither one has any football IQ. And then what was the last team? Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Again, I talked to my guy covering that team, and he says, yeah, that could definitely happen if the Niners take back Baker Mayfield. Because think about where Cleveland's at. They don't want Baker. That's guaranteed. Almost 19 million guaranteed. If they trade Baker for Jimmy, Jimmy's contract isn't guaranteed. They'll cut Jimmy. You know what I'm saying? They're not trading for Jimmy. They're trading to cut Jimmy. And so now the Niners are stuck with Baker Mayfield. I don't think they would do that. Like, why would you want a $19 million backup? It would look bad. It doesn't make sense. Maybe if they could like get Cleveland to take half of that salary, but still it seems like just cut Jimmy. Just cut him. That's what I think. They're going to have to like explain why they're cutting him, but they probably will.
Yep. Let's break it down team by team. I'll say, I mean, Houston, right? You have Davis Mills. You drafted him last year. Davis Mills looked solid. Like he didn't look horrible. He looked solid for what, a second, third round pick. Right now, there were some games that he was struggling, like against Buffalo and things like that. Right, but Davis Mills overall, I thought he was solid. And if you look at the Texans as a team, the Texans aren't making it to the playoffs this year.
Right.
They'll be lucky to win more than 5 games. So why would they go out and make a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? They just
Our
roll.
rookie quarterback showed some good stuff last year. Let's put him on the bench. Now let's sit him up for a while. I think that doesn't make any sense, man.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
You threw him in the deep end. He swam. And now you're bringing him out? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, Houston's not even a contending team. So bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo or making a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, you're going to have to give up assets, and he's getting paid $20-something million a year.
Thank you, Amin.
Why would you want to do that? It just makes absolutely zero sense for Houston.
Yeah,
and you look at Carolina.
Yeah, you do it.
And you look at Carolina now. If you look at Carolina, you drafted Matt Corral. But the way I look at it is, why would Carolina want to take the risk to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo? They took that risk last year with Sam Darnold. Now, a lot of us will be like, oh, but Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Sam Darnold. Sure, on the flip side, that might be true. But why would the Carolina Panthers want to take that risk, especially if coming off shoulder surgery?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why would you want both of them? But then why would the Carolina Panthers be willing to take that risk of Jimmy coming off a shoulder injury and giving up assets and paying him $20-something million? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think Carolina will be willing to take that risk to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, because Jimmy Garoppolo is a big unknown, especially with that shoulder injury. With that shoulder injury, he's a huge unknown. And giving up assets and paying him the price that you're paying him, I just don't see it. And then
Cleveland. Sorry, you said Carolina. Like, again, you bring in Jimmy. Like, where are you going? Are you really going to make the playoffs? Really?
I don't think
you want Jimmy Garoppolo away from making the playoffs. Carolina, I don't think so.
And look at Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at their team. Let's look at the division first off. Break down the division. Jimmy Garoppolo's not beating the Ravens twice a year. Jimmy Garoppolo's not beating the Bengals.
Nope.
He might split with the Steelers, maybe. But even then, that's a huge unknown.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, look at what Julian Edelman said. Going back to what Julian Edelman said. Julian Edelman said Jacoby Brissett with an injured thumb came out and he still played the game, and we won with Jacoby Brissett. So why would the Browns want to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? And even if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, you still have Baker Mayfield on the team, and you have Jacoby Brissett, who Julian Edelman even said Jacoby Brissett is a competitor, and whatever injury that he has, he'll play through it.
It
If
really
Jimmy
felt like
Garoppolo,
Julian Edelman was speaking directly to
yeah,
Cleveland, right? It
I mean,
did.
if Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt this year, and he's already coming off an injury, Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured or sprains his ankle or something like that, like why take that risk also? So like, I don't even see any of these three teams be willing to give up assets or trade for Jimmy Garoppolo because realistically, either they have better options or just not worth it to them because Jimmy doesn't bring any benefits and it's not worth a team giving up assets for Jimmy G. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just don't see it. Any of these three teams, I just don't see it. Moving on to the 2021 redraft. Now, if today was the 2021 NFL draft and the Niners could go back and do it all over again, would the Niners draft Trey Lance?
I think they would. I think what's interesting is that Pro Football Focus did this exercise and had him taking Mac Jones. Like, way to be a prisoner of the moment. Mac Jones played last year on a good team with a great defense, went to the playoffs, bombed. Did not play well down the stretch. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but I think it's pretty clear what he is and what his ceiling is. It's probably good, not great. And what's intriguing about, I'm not convinced Mac Jones ever going to win a Super Bowl. I don't think he's ever going to win a Super Bowl. Trey Lance seems like the kind of guy who could maybe. And that's at least that's the best thing you can say about a quarterback. Because once you see enough of a quarterback and you say, you know what, he's not ever winning a Super Bowl, what's the point of having him? That's how I
Yep.
feel about Jimmy. That's how I feel about Baker. Like, essentially, you're just kind of spinning your wheels having this guy as your starter. At least roll with someone who has some potential. Trey has that potential. My question is, would he have gone even higher? Maybe not. I do think Trevor Lawrence and Zach
I don't.
Wilson have a lot of
Yeah.
potential too, but those three
Yeah.
probably have the most.
Only reason why I wouldn't say Trey Lance will go against above those two guys is because if Trevor Lawrence pans out, right, everybody was like, oh, he's the next Andrew Luck. He's the next Andrew Luck, right? So the Jaguars are basically banking on his potential and they, expect him to blossom in Jacksonville. And then Zach Wilson, right? Zach Wilson might not be ready yet, but they're banking on that potential, right? And the same thing with Trey Lance. The only guy where you're not banking on potential is Mac Jones because Mac Jones, his whole entire career is going to be Mac Jones. He's not going to,
No.
skyrocket and,
Right.
he doesn't have a high ceiling, right?
No.
So the way I look at it is obviously 1 and 2, I think, are going to say the same. Now with Trey Lance, everybody's like, maybe Mac Jones maybe at this pick. But the reason why I still say Trey Lance is because if I can have a guy that possibly can, yes, probably win a Super Bowl, and that has top 10, if not top 5 potential in the league, why wouldn't I take that over a guy like Mac Jones, who I'm not saying he can't win a Super Bowl, but I would say it's highly unlikely that he does. But why would I draft Mac Jones when I don't think he can be a top 10 quarterback in this league? Straight up. He's just not going to be a top 10 quarterback in this league.
Also, we know the Niners didn't have to trade up to 3 for Mac Jones. They could have just stayed at 12 and had Mac Jones. So that's some serious revisionist history. I would have been unhappy. It would have been unpopular among Niner fans moving up to 3 for Mac Jones. I mean, we saw how they felt about that. And it would have been ultimately the wrong move because we saw that he was available at 15.
Yep.
A Tisa is a Tiso. Is a Tiso.
All right.
Karan Sharma put me on the Tisos. They're nice.
Hey, man.
Got a bunch of little features and stuff that I don't know how they work, but I just wear it because it looks cool.
Grant always got the swag. First, it was the red jacket, then I think it was the gold, gold quality control jacket.
Every day he hooked it up. I got him right there. I can choose.
Repping the black, black
I like
jacket.
the black one a lot. I like it a lot. Sometimes I almost go out in public wear it, and I'm like, nah, I shouldn't do this. Like,
it matches the microphone. I mean, it looks kind of cool.
Thanks, man.
Well, moving on to the next topic. How does the Commanders' Terry McLaurin extension affect 49ers? Affect the 49ers if they do extend Deebo Samuel, which they probably will. But how does it affect that deal?
Well, a couple things. One, he didn't go to minicamp. He got his deal before Deebo. He must be so mad. Deebo's like, oh my God. Like, I was trying to be the good guy. Went to minicamp. Still Terry McLaurin got it before me. To me, I don't understand. It seemed like in the past, before John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were here, when Trent Baalke was here, he liked to extend people early. I remember this. He did it with Vance McDonald. I thought his idea was extend them before they hit the market. He did it with Anthony Davis too. Extend them early because the longer you wait, the more the price goes up. Had the Niners extended Debo first thing this offseason, they could have extended him before Christian Kirk got signed. They could have extended him before A.J. Brown got signed, Terry McLaurin got signed.
Yep.
Now, the signing bonus goes up, the guaranteed money goes up, and Debo has more and more of like an argument to be like, well, this is the price, and this is what I'm worth a little bit more. And it seems like you just cost yourselves money. So it seems like it just further cements what the floor of the negotiations for the Niners and Debo.
Yep. Now I'll be honest. I don't think the Terry McLaurin extension affects Debo Samuel and his extension at all, because Terry McLaurin's getting paid 3 years, $71 million, right? And there's no way in hell Debo wants 3 years, $71 million, right?
Well,
Now,
I was
I
thinking
personally
about it.
think,
Hold on. He's 26. I mean, you could have a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year extension. Maybe he wants to hit the market again before he's 30. Something to think about. Because with Terry, like, it's a 3-year extension, but he gets the same amount of guaranteed money and signing bonus as AJ Brown. He just gets to hit the market again earlier. I mean, maybe that appeals to Debo, or maybe Debo wants long-term security, which to me doesn't exist in the NFL unless it's fully guaranteed.
I personally think the extensions for AJ Brown and those guys, AJ Brown obviously got his $100 million extension. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. I think those extensions. Sorry if everybody hears the gardener in the backyard. Well, the gardener's here. If anybody can hear the gardener in the background. But I personally think the AJ Brown, Devontae Adams, Tyreek extensions affect Debo Samuel more than the Terry McLaurin's extension, because those guys are getting $100 million plus. The guarantees are going up. So that's what doesn't make sense to me. When the Niners keep waiting and waiting and waiting, I'm like, guys are getting paid. Receivers are getting paid. So the more the price is going up and up and up and up and up and up. So why wait, right? Why do you keep waiting? If the Niners signed Debo when he wanted that trade extension, when he wanted to be traded, if the Niners signed him back then or before that after the season, you'd have probably had to pay him less than AJ Brown would have gotten. Yeah. Or less than, Tyreek Hill would have gotten. But now, Debo Samuel, you can be in negotiations and you could offer him the same thing as AJ Brown, a little bit more, but then Debo could straight up be like, AJ Brown just plays receiver. Mm-hmm. I play running back and receiver. I'm used way more than AJ Brown ever has been. Or, I'm used way more than Devontae Adams has been. I do more than Devontae Adams, right? I'm a running back and a wide receiver. So I want to get paid double, or I want to get more guaranteed money, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where the Niners fall, because they waited so long. Now, with the George Kittle extension and those other extensions that happened a couple of years ago, with George Kittle, it was different because outside of Travis Kelce, who was also in the market, there weren't that many tight ends getting paid. This year, there's already been like almost 4 or 5 receivers, if not more, big-time receivers that have gotten paydays. So now the Niners have to pay them way more. So I'm just saying, the longer the Niners wait, the bigger the price go up, the more guaranteed money that Debo Samuel's going to want. It's just not good. Why not just make the smart decision and sign him either after the season, after the season started, or sign him before training camp or before OTAs? But instead, the Niners waited like they normally do, and the price just keeps going way up.
I want to respond to Baymax's latest comment. Yep. If I'm graduating high school, what steps do I do to be able to ask team questions and be able to practice like you? Does a degree really matter these days, or is it who you know? It's a very good question. I've shown Amin the ropes. I've shown a lot of people the ropes and how to like get a YouTube channel and give yourself a platform, but that doesn't get you a credential. And that's the big conundrum. I think if you really want that credential, what you need, having a platform helps. Doing some journalism classes couldn't hurt. If you got a school newspaper at college, being a part of it couldn't hurt. But what you want to do, especially in the Bay, if you wanted to get a credential for the Niners, you want to start hitting up the newspapers that are in Northern California. from Modesto. I worked for Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is 100 miles north of Santa Clara. You want to call all those places because if you can convince them to invest in a little bit of Niners coverage, they can get a credential for you. All those newspapers. I mean, they don't have to ask the Niners permission. They just have to say we want one. So if you can convince them, like, hey man, like I'll be your freelancer. You don't have to pay me that much because honestly, you can get your own money on YouTube. You just need that credential. Frankly, you might do it for free. So if you can convince the Modesto Bee or whoever to get to give you a credential and let you be there, then you can get it. So it's a good question, and I know a lot of people want to be there. So that would be my advice. Like look online, find out who the sports editor is at every small little spot in the market in Northern California. Hit them up and be like, I want to work for you, man. Let's do it. See what happens. That's what I would say.
Yep, that's great advice. I mean, I have 4 years left of high school, so I'm gonna finish that.
A lot of time, but that's what I would say, man. Because right now it's like it's kind of old. Like it's not just like, oh, you have a good YouTube channel. Here's your credential. It's like, no, who do you work for? I don't know, no one. So now, so it's all like a system built from the 1980s, newspapers. So okay, hit them up.
Hey, shout out No Border Sports is in the chat. Crypto Ryan, go check out their channel. They just reached 100 subscribers. Go check out their channel. Go show them some love. Subscribe to No Border Sports if you haven't already. Go show them some love. Shout out to the chat. The chat was lit tonight. We got Josh Mangold, David McNew. We got New One and Baymac. Jesse popped in for a little bit. So shout out to the chat tonight. We love your support. Especially, I love you guys' support. But that basically wraps up the show. I appreciate you for joining me, Grant. Shout, if you haven't subscribed to Grant,
show, man. I mean, it's been a minute. You really carried the whole show like a pro. Excellent.
Excellent job. Appreciate that. I mean, if you haven't subscribed
to
Grant,
heading into high school, or are you going to 8th grade?
I'm going to high school next year.
Bingo, man. Hey, congrats.
Appreciate it.
Nice.
If you haven't already subscribed to Grant's channel, which I know many of you already are, probably all my subscribers are already subscribed to Grant's channel, but if you haven't already, go subscribe to Grant's channel. Go follow him on Twitter at Grant Cohn. All the links are in the description. YouTube, Twitter. Go check out his article on Fan Nation, Sports Illustrated. The link is also in the description. And go check him out on Cameo. If you want him to roast you, he got you. If you want to say something positive about you, he got you, okay? Anything that you want, any personalized message, he got you. So go check him out on Cameo. All 4 links are in the description. YouTube, Twitter, Sports Illustrated, Fan Nation, and his Cameo. You will not be disappointed. And if you're not subscribed to my channel already, please go do so. It'll be greatly appreciated. We're on like 15 subscribers away from 20 subscribers, 15 and 20 subscribers away from 600 subscribers.
There you go.
So please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Yeah. I appreciate you for joining me, Grant. It was a pleasure to, sit down and talk sports with you again.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys in the next one.
For sure. We'll link back up during the season, man.
Yep, definitely.